now we'll get started, and we can catch up folks if they arrive a little bit late. I'm Kelly Huff, and I have been a member of Glenn several years ago, for about 25 years, and so it's really wonderful to be back here, and I'm in the same old rooms, and the same smell, and the same faces. It's wonderful. And professionally, I am a speech pathologist from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and I went to graduate school there. And then since getting a degree in speech pathology, I worked at Emory for 7 years. I started a private practice clinic. I started a school, and that's allowed me to travel all around the world, basically. And so even though I'm a speech pathologist, having that as my educational background and training, I've done lots of other things, from having to learn how to run a business and do payroll and bookkeeping to being a consultant internationally. And so one of the purposes of the meeting today, of the workshop, give me just a break for a second, we're just filling out this anonymously and answering those 3 questions on the front. And then there's a name tag for you, is to say that the jobs that are available today and the jobs that you're going to need to fill 5 years from now are vastly different. And so the skill sets, though, that you're developing are the things that are going to be important in the next few years. And that's what we're going to focus on. We're looking more at skill sets rather than actual professions or college degrees necessarily. And we'll go into a lot of what that's about. So the school that I currently have is an online academy, Aurora International Academy, and it provides online K through 12 courses and some SAT prep courses to students around the world internationally, because there's a couple of reasons for that in terms of business planning and business model and where the world is going. I'll get into that as well. So the 3 things that we started the day with: top 3 questions about college. We'll want to answer those before the end of the day. Your biggest fear or worry or concern about college, and we all have those. And so thank you for filling that part out. And then we forget to think about sometimes looking forward to college and what we're going to like when we get there, and how to balance all of the things that happen in college with still being excited about being there. So first, to start off with, just being grateful and appreciating just how rare this moment is, because on the global stage and looking at the global marketplace, I know you guys have heard that over and over and over again, you guys are in the top 1%. You guys are in a country where the majority of students are looking at life post-secondary school and where they're going to go after high school. In other countries, we just simply don't have, or they don't simply have that option. And so regardless of all of the things that America doesn't do all that well, America does post-secondary education really well. And so as we look at colleges, on the flip side of that is that we've got competition from students in other countries looking to gain acceptance and admission to American universities and colleges. So your competitors are not just simply your classmates, but they're also coming from China and India and a growing middle class and other markets around the world, in Saudi Arabia. And those guys are oftentimes paying cash for getting into college here. They're not looking at scholarships. And oftentimes the countries are funding the students to be here. And so that's a little different perspective than oftentimes just simply looking at the other students in our school and where they're going to college. And then the opposite side of that, though, is that when those students finish college, they usually go back to their home countries. And Georgia and surrounding areas around colleges and universities are left without the brightest students that came from around the world for finding jobs and for fulfilling jobs in the marketplace. So we're going to look at those things as well. Before we get started, we also have to introduce ourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you wanted to be before you turned 12, between the ages of 10 and 12, before peer pressure begins to have its effect, and before teachers and advisors begin to tell us what we should do with our likes and interests. We kind of know what we want to be when we grow up. And so I'll go first. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I loved animals when I was between 10 and 12. and I loved animal behavior. So I really didn't know that, so that's why I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I didn't really want to get into the whole science and surgery and aspect of animal medicine. I really liked teaching animals things and caring for animals, and I wasn't really sure what that would involve, but I loved, you might remember this, Suzanne, the Jane Goodall movies about chimpanzees and what she learned about gorillas, about chimpanzees and then gorillas, and just watching animals and how they communicate with each other. And so there was only one program in the whole country. It was in Bucknell, Pennsylvania, and that would have an animal behavior major for me, and I couldn't afford to go to Bucknell, Pennsylvania, to this very expensive private school. And so what I did was to look at my love of communication and my interest in science, and that's how I became a speech pathologist. And so in a way, I still study animal behavior. It's just with not exactly animals, it's with Homo sapiens. And so that's how I came to be what I do, and why I've never thought about leaving this profession, but I've been able, when I'm 80 years old, I think I'll still be doing what I do because I like it so much, and every day doesn't feel like work, it feels like a passion. So why don't we start over here with Suzanne. What did you want to be when you were between 10 and 12?
Well, I did a lot of observations as a child of people and animals. And so that led me to take theater courses and to study, to study some science courses. And so I got my Bachelor of Arts from the College of Charleston in theater, and my MFA, Master of Fine Arts, from Brandeis in acting. And I'm using it now as a teacher. I teach, I guess my specialty is teaching gifted children that are dual, that they're quirky, they may have be autistic, or they may have ADHD, but their IQ is higher. So I love that part of trying to figure out, just going back to observing them and figuring out how I can meet their needs.
And specifically, how do you bring your theater training into your job?
Well, a lot of times I deal with children that have processing deficits incoming, so if I'm just talking to them, they're not getting what I'm saying. So I do a lot of acting out, and I have a lot of ESOL students who don't understand the language well. So when we do high-level skills like social studies, where you have to, bring details for the big picture, they do really well with acting it out. So I do a lot of that in my class in social studies.
Excellent. Go next.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a firefighter.
What are you?
I'm Duncan.
Firefighter.
Yeah.
Great. Let's see, one more question, just to throw us all off base. When other countries look at America, what do other countries think we do really well? We'll go back to Suzanne. What do you think other countries think we do? Creativity? Duncan, what do you think other countries think we do really well?
Well, the whole idea of the American dream and being able to rise up out of your social class is really foreign to places like India, where they have rigid caste systems where if your dad owned the shop, then you're gonna do work in the shop, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Next, your name.
I'm also Duncan, and when I was 10 or through 12, I wanted to be a biologist. I'm pretty sure. The reason why I wanted to is probably because I like animals, and for whatever reason, One of the things that I think America does really well is, like you said earlier, puts us in the mindset of what are we going to do in college and what job do we want to have. Just putting priming our minds so that we're able to plan out our future a lot better.
Very good. You guys are right on it. Okay, next.
I'm Sam, and when I was younger, I wanted to be an archaeologist, which morphed into geology when I was in about 6th grade, I think, and that I was just really interested in rocks and minerals and stuff like that. I've still got like a whole collection of them, but yeah, so geology, I guess.
Great.
And I think America has a really high average standard of living compared to a lot of other countries around the world, but I don't know what else.
That is good. Scott, I think you are correct.
Hi, I'm Greta. When I was younger, I wanted to be a fashion designer and a famous singer, something like that was really unrealistic. And I'm actually not really sure how other countries see us, but maybe like our upper class is really, really, really huge, and like entertainment wise with all of that. And then our economy, like, we know that it's bad, but it looks pretty good.
And next.
I'm Kristen, and when I was little, I wanted to be, an artist. I loved art, like I'd paint and like draw every day, but it was pretty unrealistic. Like I mean, I don't see myself as being an artist now. I'm still an artist, but not as a career for me. And I actually do agree with Sam on this one, and Greta for that matter. Like, I don't really know how other countries see us, but I do think that overall we have a higher standard of living than most other places.
My name is Celeste. When I was like 10, I always had a dream of being a veterinarian. How do other countries see us? I have to agree with Susanna on creativity. I believe that I'm a theater major, by the way, but I believe that other countries see us as the boiling pot of the world. So.
Very nice. Chuck. Your name and what did you want to be between 10 and 12?
Between 10 and 12, probably I wanted to be an astronaut because I was, going to the moon and all that stuff. But that didn't happen.
And why didn't that happen?
Why didn't that happen? Gosh, just those dreams fade, I guess, over time.
Did you not find a college program for aeronautical space studies?
I think I got interested in other things, and started out college as an architecture major, and then switched out of that and then ended up as a theater major. So I made that happen.
That's a big shift.
Yeah. Well, I'd always been involved in the theater, and then just decided to go for it. I ended up with a master's degree in acting and acting professionally and directing a little bit. But it's hard to make a living in Georgia as a theater artist unless you're involved with the, unless you can get involved with the film industry or the, there are avenues, but there seems to be a lot of opportunity now.
Absolutely. Well, and when we were 10, astronauts were more celebrities than actual professionals. And so maybe that was why you were so interested in being an astronaut.
Yeah, they were like superheroes.
They were, yeah.
Neil Armstrong
Mhm.
walking on the moon. It's awesome.
And what's, from your perspective, other countries, when they look at America, what do they think we do really well?
Gosh, they think, well, we make movies, and probably think we soldiers. They probably think we make
Mhm.
really good soldiers. I guess we do.
And last but not least.
Hi, my name's Melissa, and when I was like little, I never wanted to be like, I don't know. I always said I wanted to be like a mermaid. Like I never wanted to be like had an actual profession,
Mhm.
but I knew I wanted to be like an athlete or a professional athlete or a mermaid.
Mhm.
And now I'm working on being a professional athlete for track and swimming, and yeah, it's going pretty well.
Excellent. And then from your perspective, when other countries look at America, what do they think we do well?
I'm not really sure, but based off what Duncan, Sam, and Greta, and everybody else said, I pretty much agree.
Mhm. And and to add my 2 cents to that as well, our average student in this country, which should be a C student, although not many people make C's anymore, but should be a C student, will outperform over their lifetime better than an A student from China or India. The ones that we think are so very bright and do so very well in school, oftentimes when it comes down to lifetime accomplishments, struggle. And that's one of the reasons why the countries that are sponsoring students to bring them here to our post-secondary education systems are doing that, is because they want to know what makes Americans so very successful and unique, and they think if they can immerse their citizens within our culture, then it will rub off, and they can take that back to their home countries. And there's nothing wrong with thinking that, because we are becoming much more of a flat world. And so sharing what we know about innovation and creativity and the American spirit, the American dream, is perfectly fine. It's what others view as being uniquely American, and there's sort of a secret sauce in there that they haven't been able to figure out in their home countries. So I think that's really cool. Thank you guys for being so open and thinking back to when you were 10 or 12, because it's what you were interested in then that we're going to look at for maybe not, you may have changed since then and no longer want to be a prima ballerina, but there are other things that you can go into that fulfill that purpose and passion that you had when you were at that age, and that you should hold on to. So how many people go to public school? Everybody goes to public school. Almost everyone goes to public. Okay. In private school, there are college counselors and advisors that have a very different role from college counselors in public school. And hi, welcome. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, the role of college counselors in private schools, and how many are working with their college counselors in public school right now? A couple of folks. And how many have gone through personality assessments and career choice assessments? Okay, so that's usually pretty part of our public school education. So you know what your personality style is? Pretty well, okay. And so some people are process-oriented thinkers, engineer type folks. Others are more nurturers and people, and may go into the usual professions are teaching and healthcare, and where you're able to be with other people and to nurture them. Others are much more, follow the rules and show up to work on time or 15 minutes early and make sure that all the details are taken care of. And then others are our astronauts or race car drivers, or oftentimes our athletes who are excited about just life. And sometimes they get the label of attention deficit because they're going a million miles an hour and it's hard to stop them and to slow them down. And so for your 4 basic personality styles we all have different varying amounts of those 4 different areas, because sometimes we really love the roller coaster rides, and other times we just want to get off and be with our friends. And so we all do all 4 of those well. There's a website, and what we're going to do today, since we don't have a huge amount of technology like in your public schools, we're going to go really old school. And so I gave you some paper, and you each have something to write with. And if you don't, I've got extra pens. And so I'm going to say the names of some websites, and I want you guys to write them down, because going really old school, there's a big benefit in writing things down and helping you remember that. Okay. Let's see, just a second. Okay. So, and you guys probably already know this, GeorgiaCollege411.org. Are you familiar with that website? Okay. It's the state's put a lot of money into developing the website to be the place you go for all types of information, from financial aid, scholarships, to information about colleges. And there's a great page on that site, which is let's see, it is, I just had it up. There we go. Career planning. And on the career planning tab, there's an opportunity for you to spend, goodness, you could probably spend a couple of hours there looking at your personality style assessment, careers that match that style assessment, and pathways for getting there, other options in those careers, such as what to do if you really love theater, but you don't want to go into theater necessarily. And also looking at what are the jobs that are in high demand these days. And so rather than spending time doing another personality assessment this morning, that's a resource for you guys to look at, which goes into farther depth. And every section, there are 6 of them, spends about 15 minutes looking at matching a career in college to your interests and your personality style, which, since you guys already know what your personality styles are, and they generally, we might think that we're changing a lot through our high school years, and before we become 25, we're maybe thinking that we're totally different people. But when they've looked at nurses assessing babies in a nursery and saying what personality style an infant had, newborn in a nursery, and looking at the same person 25 years later, the nurses were 88% accurate in determining what the personality style was. And so there are certain things that you just simply you have at birth, and there's not a lot that's going to change, although you go through different phases. And so we may sometimes want to run away from the personality style we think we have, but that's where your area of strength is. And it's okay to explore and to expand and not always be working in your area of strength. It's okay to explore areas of weakness, but coming back to your area of strength to feel comfortable and to surround yourself with folks that make you feel good. Speaking from someone who ran away from the primary personality style, which I have, which is one of being that people person, that nurturing person, the person that people thought I was going to be a teacher or like elementary school teacher, because I just love being around children, and I ran away from that for years and years because I didn't want to be that person. But it's where I feel most at home, most comfortable, even though I don't do it all that often. Even though I've built a school, I guess. Right. So next, let's see. When we look at college counselors, remember I said you guys are the 1%. You guys are in such a different place from where your parents were when we were looking at schools and going to college. And college was something that wasn't as available to us. It was something that wasn't expected always. It was something for the top 1/3 of the class, and the rest of folks in school did something else. And so college is very different these days, and students have become the commodity. Students represent a lot of money to colleges, and it's not just simply the amount of tuition or scholarships that the college is going to receive, because when a college gets a student that does well in that college, over that student's lifetime when they graduate, they become alumni, and they give back to the college. They provide scholarships to other students. They give money to the sports teams. They bring, if they are hugely successful at the college, they bring in other visitors. Their parents come. Purchases are made in the gift shops, and every time a credit card is swiped, a small percentage of the transaction fee goes back into the college. And every college these days wants to have a football team because of all the dollars that come in with football teams. And so an example of that is Little Berry College in Rome, Georgia, which was a teaching college for such a long time. And it just started its football team in this tiny little school. And the reason was because they had about 68% of their student body was female, and they wanted more males on campus. And so they started a football team. Immediately they get an increase in the male population on campus and all of the funding that goes with starting a football team and the interest. And so everybody's wanting a football team these days. So it's not just simply graduating from that college and becoming an alumni and giving back, it's corporations that are interested in seeing colleges thrive. And here in Georgia, we're in a really unique position because we've had a significant dropout rate from high school, which is about, only about 64% of our students will graduate from high school. When you look at the whole state, it's very serious. And so the state's putting more money into making sure that students graduate from high school and that they get jobs. And so making sure that our colleges are doing adequately and preparing our students for the workforce and the jobs that are available here is very important to the state, because without an adequately trained workforce, no more jobs are going to come to Georgia. And the state's been so interested in doing that they have established a high demand workforce coalition back in 2014. And they've studied the industries throughout Georgia to see where the jobs are, where they're not, and what the various industries need. And currently we need about 20,000 IT professionals. And Georgia Tech isn't pumping out 20,000 students per year. And so it's a high demand area, and the state's putting a lot of resources into growing IT professionals. And so we'll talk about more of those things a little bit later on. So for college counselors, they're very much aware of those types of things, and there's a lot of pressure on a private school college counselor to find a place in a college for a student. And that's really what defines their job. They've done a good job is whether or not they get a student placed in a college. And then the second part is that they get scholarship dollars for those students. Because when people are looking at sending their children to private school, the parents' question is, where's my child going to go after private school? What college can you get them into? And so they're like sports agents, basically, your college counselors are. And they're trading students, and they're building relationships with colleges, and they go to visit colleges, and they're treated like rock stars because they're wined and they're dined because they've got access to the best and the brightest and the students that will fit the slots that they're looking for. And so it may be that a college at the very last moment has a spot open, become available, and they'll call a college counselor and say, do you have someone who's 5'9", has red hair, likes to play soccer and golf? We think we've got a golf scholarship, and can you a GPA within this range and a SAT score within this range? And the college counselor says, let me see what I can do, and goes through the file, and they've got access to specialized software with splatter graphs to see where everybody's SAT scores are and their GPAs, and it becomes very much a numbers game. And so in Georgia, that's sort of just the way it works in private school. In public school, our public schools are really only required to give us a free, appropriate public education. And so helping us meet our full potential is not something that they're required to do. And so our governor and others at a state level realize that that's not always the main goal of public schools. It should be. Right now it's to get kids graduated, and getting kids into college with a Hope Scholarship is all a really good thing, but primarily, legally, they're really only required to give a free, appropriate public education. And so the assistance that students will get as you go through public school versus private school can be really different. And so that's one of the reasons why Blair called and said, how can we bring some information that may not be available in public school to students? And really in private school, a lot of kids don't realize that the college counselors are they're not exactly looking out for the best interest of the student. They're looking at getting the student accepted to a school. And it doesn't have to be the best school for that student, it's a school. The second part of that is that we all love the Hope Scholarship. And the Hope Scholarship has done wonderful things for Georgia. But the last time we looked at how effective the Hope Scholarship was at getting kids through college, we saw that it really wasn't that effective. And sometimes our numbers have been as high as 2/3 of the students that enter as freshmen with a Hope Scholarship lose it in their freshman year, and which is amazing. And so pinning all of our hopes on a Hope Scholarship to pay for a lot of the expenses of college is not always a safe bet either. And so in public schools, the challenge with the Hope Scholarship has been that because you have to maintain a B average in high school to get the Hope Scholarship, it's difficult to get less than a B in some classes. And when teachers give less than a B, you get a lot of pressure from parents. My kid's got to go to college, and what do you mean they've got less than a B? What can we do to give them more work so they can get get the C up to a B? And so the grades have been inflated to a degree, and that's another reason why when a student goes from a school in Georgia to a college in Georgia, they may lose the Hope Scholarship, is because they really haven't been adequately prepared for the level of rigor of academics at a Georgia college. And so a lot of challenges there, and I can understand why you guys are here today, because college oftentimes looks like the end goal, and we've got a very strange system right now for getting there. It's going to change over the next few years significantly. And in 5 years, like we said, they estimate that, the majority of jobs that will be available in 5 years are not the jobs we have currently. And so a lot of changes going on as you guys are growing up. And there's something of a movement to, it's even bigger than MOOCs and online learning, but looking at college as a place where you don't go for 4 years, but you might go for a temporary period of time and then get out and get a job, and then your additional education and training is part of that job. And so the traditional idea of a 4-year university may be something that goes away. And the reason is because of a variety of things, but mostly because of a workforce that isn't quite ready for the jobs that are in demand. And that's, it comes down to economics too. So a lot of things to think about and a lot of processing to do. But if we take a step back and we look at just simply the availability of colleges in Georgia or outside of Georgia, and we look at your personality, what your interests are, where you want to go, who's toured colleges already? Okay, so you guys have taken a look at some things. And do you know what kind of college you think you want to attend? Big school, small school? And just want to get in somewhere. Okay, so we're going to break into some smaller groups in a second. And how many people would like to travel overseas during some time during their college, do like a semester abroad? Okay. And that's a big thing these days as well. And the reason for that is to give us more of a broader viewpoint of the way the rest of the world lives, and the education you get when you're traveling is just something you can't get in a classroom. So the high demand jobs are found at georgia.org, and it's under High Demand Career Initiative. And you probably will see more and more about that, or hear more and more about that. And you'll have college counselors that are trying to sort of persuade you to go in those directions. And we've got 20,000 IT jobs, or we're going to lose IT companies that could come to Metro Atlanta and to Georgia. Then there's going to be a lot of pressure to go into IT, but IT is not always the best fit for a lot of us. And or if it's a good fit, then getting into the right, maybe it's sales in IT, because they still need salespeople, and or maybe it's human resources in IT. And so looking at what really is the best fit for you. Let's see, have you guys heard about soft skills? Soft skills. Anyone heard about soft skills? Okay, so I was just at a conference a couple of weeks ago called Georgia Learns, and it's where corporations such as UPS and Home Depot were there, and NRC, which makes all the credit card swiping machines. And they're talking about what are some of the biggest challenges with a workforce today. And ultimately the goal for college is to go out and get a job afterwards. And so we're kind of looking at what's the end goal of working, even though oftentimes we think, gosh, I just want to get to college and just get out of the house and get out of high school and have fun and be my own person. But ultimately, the goal is to get a job and be a productive citizen. That's what we're supposed to be when we grow up. So the state and corporations are looking really hard at how prepared our young people are and our workforce are for jobs that are out there. And they're saying we've got a lot of good students that are young workers who have great technical skills and degrees, but they're lacking in soft skills. And so thinking soft skills as well as workplace skills. So let's see. Some of those soft skills are things such as the ability to accept criticism. And what I want you to do is to write these down, because we're going to work with these in just a second. So the ability to accept criticism is a key soft skill that corporations want to see. And interestingly, and when you listen to corporations talk about it, they talk about how we've got a society where it's really hard for us to accept positive criticism or feedback where we may not necessarily meet up to the standards. Corporations don't know anything about rubrics, and I was really sort of surprised to hear that corporations, they're just oblivious to what a rubric is. Y'all know what rubrics are? Yeah, so you've been getting rubrics since middle school, and rubrics give you a great structure by which you can determine how much effort you're going to put into an assignment. And so corporations, they don't know that. They don't know that someone coming out of college these days has been accustomed to a rubric, because you get them in college too, and that without a rubric, it may feel like you're just sort of a fish out of water. You don't really know where you're supposed to be. And so corporations are moving into creating rubrics for this kind of behavior will get you fired, this kind of behavior will get you promoted, and this is what we expect on these various projects. Because we've just grown accustomed to that level of structure. And so it used to be that students would develop their own rubrics. You can still do that. And so asking questions and putting together a rubric to make sure that you're within the structure of where you want to be. And so that's basically the same thing as any project that you'll take on can easily be placed into a rubric. So getting accepted into the college of your dreams, make a rubric for that. If I don't fill out any applications, then I probably won't do it. Get into the college of my dreams. If I fill out these applications and put this much effort into it and talk with these various mentors, then I probably will get into the college of my dreams. It's all based onto a rubric. Adaptability and flexibility. Soft skill number 2. Adaptability and flexibility. And these corporations talk a lot about millennials and the challenges with millennials. And one of the biggest challenges is that millennials, because of their knowledge of technology and the internet and computers, come out of school with a lot of courage and bravado and sort of expect that if you can't learn it within just a couple of minutes, then it's not really that important. And this is what they're telling us. And so being able to be flexible and realize that you can learn a lot from someone who's 35 and 45 and 55 and 65 years old, like that new movie, The Intern. And so that level of flexibility of where can I gain knowledge and who can help me with moving forward. And the reason we're writing on these soft skills is because these are, you guys haven't heard of them, and they're brand new. It's what the government in the state and workplaces are looking for, and you're going to use these as you go through college in any essay that you write and any resume you write. And essays to get into college, I want you to be able to identify what the soft skills are that people are looking for that are important. The next one is analytical skills, the ability to analyze information. The next is attention to detail. The next is business acumen. And by that, they're really talking about what's the real bottom line here. It's not about showing up to work and clocking out at 5 or 4 or 3 whenever you're allowed to clock out, and putting forth an effort to get through the workday. Business acumen has to do with what's the bottom line, and who's the customer, and who's paying your paycheck, and where does the money really come from. And so that level of knowledge when you're going about your workday is important, and that's not something that we often hear about or think about, or really, especially at this age, we're not really thinking about it. But when you do enter a workplace and you go about entering college with an idea that at some point someone's going to pay you a salary, and it's going to be a really good salary, then knowing where those dollars come from is very important. Communication skills and being able to communicate with a multiple group of personality styles. Have you guys taken speech classes, where you give speeches, or debate classes? No? And speech classes and debate classes, they used to be just part of our educational system, and they've gone to the wayside, really, but they're coming back. And debate is something that, learning how to form an argument and to debate someone in a respectful manner and in a way that can change the opinion of others is a skill that folks are looking for. And so if you get an opportunity to debate, to be on a debate team, certainly take that opportunity, because the skills that you gain in terms of research and knowledge of information of what you need to know about in order to debate someone is huge. And emphasize that on your application and your resume, because it's a critical process that no one really has, enough skill set in these days. And so debate skills, communication skills, the communication skills of looking someone in the eye, shaking their hand with a firm handshake, all of those things, we've sort of forgotten that those are important, and now they're coming back to say that our workplaces are saying we need workers who are trained to do that. And so now there are all these groups that are popping up that will actually go into a workplace just to train someone on developing these skills, when at a previous time it was part of our education system. Customer focus. Keeping the focus on the customer, and which goes beyond just simply smiling at the customer and being polite, but it has to do with the words that you use. It has to do with eye contact. It has to do with being an advocate for the customer. And so emphasizing that in any job that you've had as a high school student, especially dealing with customers, having that as part of your package for going away to college is significant. And these are the skills that our workplaces are saying our new workers are lacking. And so you emphasize that you've got those skills, and that's important. Dependability and punctuality, which I thought was really funny that they had to list this, because people are having to be trained to be dependable and punctual. And we live in a busy world, and especially in Atlanta with tons of traffic. But showing up for work, even when you're sick sometimes, is important. Leadership skills, and you guys have probably seen and heard a ton about leadership skills, but emphasizing that on your college application and essay. Even if it's have you guys seen the video of the guy with like the 5 German Shepherds that walks them down the street, and he doesn't have to have any leashes on them, and they're just like, are so attuned with his body movements that they all just stay right there in a pack. Well, that's real leadership. And so the something as unusual as that, emphasizing the leadership skills that are required to be 5 German Shepherds walk down a street full of busy people, is something that you can pull out of your experience. Passing drug and background checks. This one also surprised me, that we've got a workforce that can't pass background checks and drug checks. And in this state, I was talking with the Department of Corrections because the governor has appointed a new director of education in our prison system. And it's not just our juvenile prison system, but overall our prison system has so many prisoners that don't have a GED or a high school diploma. And so now they have, the superintendent from Forsyth County is now the director of education for our prison system, responsible for 150 inmates as well as parolees that he's required to educate and to prepare for jobs. And so there's a huge push because we're graduating, I think, the first 5,000 inmates this month with an actual high school diploma to go out and prepare to find jobs so that they don't end up going back into prison. And so it's a big initiative, but they're also going on to college and moving forward. And so it's an exciting time with a big problem that some folks put together some solutions for. But make sure that you can pass the drug tests and the background checks. That's hugely important. And more and more workplaces are requiring random drug screens. And it's something that, let's see, interestingly, I find just in my going about life that people will say, I can't do that because I could randomly be drug tested at any point. And so it's one way of avoiding drugs. If there's anything you can do to stay away from that downfall is important. And at least our workplaces are supporting that too. Planning and organization. And if you're the person in high school who, when you get assigned a project and a team with a project of 4 other people and you're the only one who actually works on the project, has anybody ever had that experience? Okay. Then that's important to emphasize because that's usually what happens in regular life too. And so being able to either meet the deadline by doing most of the work yourself, that's one skill set, but more important, developing the skill set that rallies the rest of the group so that they're all participating and everybody meets the deadline. That's a leadership skill and a communication skill. That will go really far. And it comes back to planning and organization, those things to emphasize. Problem solving and critical thinking. That one's sort of a no-brainer. But what's interesting is that the more the world becomes like Walmart with so many choices and so many distractions, the harder it is to think critically and to problem solve. It takes longer. You have to do more research. So being able to analyze that quickly and process that is important. Project management and teamwork. Time management, and then work ethic and motivation, which goes back to punctuality and dependability. Okay, so next, so I can take a break and have a sip of water. We're going to break into some smaller groups, and let's see. Do you guys all know each other fairly well, or are you fairly unfamiliar with each other? Okay, all right. Then let's do it individually then. Those soft skills we just listed, I want you to think of someone in your life that it could be a historical character, it could be somebody that you know who has gone through challenges or adversity and has overcome those challenges or adversity. And one of those, or 2 or 3 of those, but no more than 3 or 4 of the soft skills were used to overcome that adversity. And write a brief paragraph on that person. The person that comes to my mind, because I like this person a lot, is Franklin Roosevelt, and how he was in office for 4 terms as a president during World War II, one of the most difficult times in our country. And the man had polio, and he wasn't in a wheelchair when he first went into office. He had been an athlete, but had this horrible situation happen to him, and he acquired polio and lost the use of his legs. But he still, when he went out in public, until the very, very end, would force himself through braces and crutches to stand up to meet everyone. And so it's just amazing to me that this man had such incredible need to communicate with his citizens, and the tenacity and the perseverance and the motivation to do this job, this incredibly hard job for 4 terms. For 16 years, he did this. And so I could easily write a paragraph on Franklin Roosevelt and those soft skills that he possessed. So I want you guys to think about either someone that you know or a famous person in history and just identify some of the soft skills that they used to overcome adversity. So we're going to take about, 10 minutes, a paragraph.